Hello, researchers. My name is Malcolm Shambana to take you once again in research methods. And today we are looking at construct, study variables, and frameworks within your research project. It's very important that you understand the relationships among the subject of interest within your research project, and that will actually guide you in the right direction of your thesis, dissertation, or research report. So sit back, relax, enjoy your drink as you watch this session on construct, study variables, and research frameworks. Thank you. Introduced, my name is Malcolm Shambana. You can catch me on +260 977 488 442. That's my mobile line. You can send WhatsApp or text. If you have any query, concern, or contributions, you can also subscribe to my channel so that you can be receiving um, updates on my new videos, or even watch already existing videos. There are several videos which I've produced regarding research methods, so you need to look out for that through my channel. So our learning objective this session, we are looking at what a construct is. We need to understand what a construct is. We are also looking at what a study variable is. We are looking at types of variables. We are going into details, look at types of variables and how they relate to each other. We are also going to look at conceptual and theoretical framework. So it's important that at the end of the session, you have a clear understanding of these items, and they will help you through your thesis or dissertation or research report, because they are key items in your research. What is a construct? A construct is an attribute or character that is stated in an abstract or general manner. It's not specific. A construct is a broad concept, or you can say in plural, a broad concept or topics of a study. If a topic is very broad, or an item within the topic has been stated in a broad manner that you can't easily measure it, then it becomes a construct. A construct is not directly measurable or observable. As long as you know that an item within your research topic or aim or subject, or maybe within your objective, is wide, it's very broad, and you cannot measure it, then it becomes a construct. There are several examples of constructs. One is motivation. You cannot easily measure or observe motivation. Two, there is self-esteem. You cannot measure self-esteem or easily observe self-esteem. It's very subjective. There is satisfaction, which is also very subjective. You cannot easily measure it or observe it. Then we also have variables. What is a variable? A variable is a character or attribute that changes or takes different values that can be measured. A variable definitely becomes different from a construct, since here in this case we are able to measure the variable. A variable in research is stated in a specific and measurable manner. It's specific. What it is it distance? Is it height? Is it length? We'll go into those examples. It can be height, like I suggested. It can be weight. It can be age, or even length. That's what a variable is characterized with. It can be measured, it's specific. It's an item within your research topic or your research aim or your research question. In those lines, the golden threads, any item which is measurable and specific, any item of interest which is measurable and specific is a variable. It's not wide, it's just specific and measurable. We move on. As a researcher, you need to understand the types of variables because each variable deserves a different treatment or even approach on how you interpret it because they have different features. One variable may differ from another variable. Just within your research, you may have several variables, but today we are going to concentrate on a few major ones, which we are going to discuss right away. There are several variables in research, but our focus today are on four main variables which are used commonly in uh, academic research. And these variables are, one of them is the dependent variable, which is a variable that varies when other variables change. It depends on what's happening with other variables. If the other variable goes up, it may go up as well or may go down. If the other variable goes down, it may go up or go down. It depends on what's happening with the other variables. It may be one other variable or two or more. It is a variable that the researcher is interested in measuring, the dependent variable. Whenever you are doing your research, your main research or your main concern is on the dependent variable. Then we have the independent variable, which is the variable whose changes affects the other variables. Here we are talking of when we mean by what we mean by other variables, we are looking at dependent variables. When this variable changes, it also affects the other variable. It's either the other variable also increases if it is increased, or it reduces if this is increased. The relationship may be inverse, falling in opposite direction, or may be in the same direction. Increase the one variable, which is the independent, also the dependent increases, or the opposite. Increase the independent, then the dependent reduces. It is a variable which you can use as a researcher to manipulate the effect of the dependent variable. You want to know what happens to the dependent variable by making changes, alterations to the dependent variable. An example, rainfall here in Zambia. We have drought and we have been using drought as an example. So the independent variable in our case, looking at the economy, is the rainfall, the quantity of rainfall we experience in Zambia. And then the independent variable is the economic growth or the economy in general, economic performance in general, is the dependent variable. So rainfall quantity is the independent affecting the dependent variable, which is the economic performance or economic growth. Economic growth depends on how much rain we receive as a nation. Since we depend, besides depending on mining, we largely depend on agriculture. We largely depend on agriculture. So if we have adequate rainfall, the economy performs well. Remember, this is just a concept which we haven't yet tested, and it's just a concept. We are just discussing what variables we are going to look at in our research. We haven't yet tested and confirmed this relationship. We move to other factors. We have mediating variables. Such variables is there to show the relationship between the independent and dependent variable. It, it's a guide, it's a stepping stone for that relationship between rainfall and the economic performance. There is a variable in between those two items. Rainfall, for example, crop yield. Rainfall is going to affect the crop yield. If we have enough rainfall, say there is an increase in rainfall, then the yield or the tonnage of maize we are going to produce as a nation will also increase. So rainfall is affecting the crop yield. And this crop yield is also affecting the economic performance. If the yield is high, the economic performance also goes up. But the initial variable was the independent variable, which is rainfall. So the mediating variable there is the crop yield. So when doing a research, you might also develop an interest in examining the mediating factor, which is the crop yield. When researching on the effect of rainfall on economic growth, definitely you won't ignore the mediating factor, which is the crop yield, which is a step affecting the economic growth. So the mediating factor is there to mediate the relationship between rainfall, which is the independent variable, and also the economic growth. We also have the moderating variable, which strengthens or changes the direction of the relationship between the dependent and independent variable. It strengthens the relationship between the rainfall and the economic growth. In our case, we will give an example, definitely rainfall, which is independent variable, having a relationship with the economic growth. But this relationship can be affected by, this is just an example, government policy. If you have a good government policy with good rainfall, you are likely to have economic growth or a good or great economic performance. If you have rainfall, which is independent, with economic growth, which is dependent, and a poor government policy, even if the crop yield is okay, the economic performance may not be well. Maybe the way the stock of maize is managed, maybe the maize, even if you have good yield, it's not stored well, it goes bad. affecting the performance, so many other issues. So there is a moderating variable which strengthens or changes the direction of the relationship between the dependent and independent variable. So even in your study, you need to understand if there is such a variable affecting the independent and dependent variable so that you make a right conclusion and also make correct recommendations. This is very important, especially in your thesis and dissertation, that you don't ignore other variables and you have to understand the relationship among variables, how they relate. Because if you just decide to study rainfall and economic growth without considering the moderating variable, which is government policy, you may give a wrong recommendation or jump into wrong conclusion. Or if you ignore the crop yield, maybe understanding the relationship, how the crop yield affects the economic growth, you may jump into wrong conclusion or give wrong recommendation. You need to understand these other variables. Besides knowing the independent variable or the dependent variable, you also need to understand the mediating variable and the moderating variable. That's very critical in your research. So we come to the conceptual framework and the theoretical framework. Why we are discussing this? Because they are also involved in discussion of relationship between variables and other items of interest in your research. So the conceptual framework illustrates the expected relationship between or among study variables. Let me use the word among study variables because we have more than two. You might have more than two. You may have two, but you might have more than two. So it illustrates how the independent variables is related to the particular independent variable is related to the dependent variable or mediating variable or moderating variable. There is also the theoretical framework, which is the review of existing theories, which serves as a guide for developing the conceptual framework. The theoretical framework discusses existing theories and compares those theories and you need to come up with a relationship among those theories. It mainly looks at the already existing theories in terms of your subject, your research topic. It examines existing theories. Whereas the conceptual framework looks at what relationship you intend to study, or maybe a new concept which you intend to study, a new relationship which you intend to study. The conceptual framework is more broad. It encompasses existing theories that are, and those theories that are emerging and yet to be tested. So the conceptual framework may include items from the theoretical framework and also items that are emerging as a concept, usually showing relationships among variables. So an example from our study of a conceptual framework, which is usually done it can be in a written form, or maybe you can create a structure like this one, showing the relationship, and a narration. You may include a narration explaining the relationships among the study variables. Then you have made your conceptual framework. There has been debate on where to place your conceptual framework as well as your theoretical framework. Some say the conceptual framework has to be introduced in your introduction, then written in details in your literature review, same as the theoretical framework. Some say it's supposed to be introduced in your introduction, then further expanded in your literature review. Some say the theoretical framework is supposed to be in the literature review, and then the conceptual framework is supposed to be in your chapter 3, which is your methodology. But however, what I would advise is seek guidance from your institution. It's critical. Usually we have guidance on how we go about various research projects from our institutions, and we have to adhere to the institutional requirements. That's very important. Hopefully, this session has helped you understand your study variables and your conceptual and theoretical framework. If you like this video, you can like it, and then you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel for notification of any new videos produced by myself. Wish you all the best in your research. Thank you.